On September 13th, 2023, the FBI would make their first announcement about a group known as 764. Unknown to almost everyone, this dark group had been operating behind the scenes for years, and their highly illegal activity had not been stopped. Now, members of this group are being shut down slowly but surely, yet this cult persists. This is a story of the internet's darkest cult. In a quiet, small town lived a boy named Bradley Cadenhead. Although things started out well for him in life to the outside world, with lots assuming that he had a brilliant and close-knit family, everything started to change when he was just 10 years old. When he hit that double-digit age in 2016, his mother would move out of their family home. She describes the experiences she had, saying that she fell into habits of drinking and partying a lot, and although life seemed great for her, the same couldn't be said for her child. While dealing with the split of a family, life got no better for him at school. Bradley was relentlessly bullied, and his classmates saw him as an easy target. This constant harassment and tumultuous family life led him to dark places, with the child often feeling isolated and suffering breakdowns. In his own words, he stopped caring about anything and everything, and by 15, he had dropped out of school completely. But although he failed to find a home in the real world, the digital one came calling. We all know the internet is open to absolutely anyone, no matter where you come from or how old you are, and this was the case for Bradley. Before him was a sprawling network of connections that he couldn't make in real life, and so he saw this opportunity and grabbed it. In 2021, he had discovered Discord, and he was a user who knew how to work the platform. It doesn't take long to figure out how to create and operate a server where you can connect with anyone, and it was no different here. Bradley had all of these skills, and one day he put them to the test. Bradley would create a Discord server, but not just an ordinary one. He would call it 764, named after the partial zip code of his own hometown. In his small bedroom, he would craft a server that would become a mainstay in the criminal underworld, and most people wouldn't just describe it as a server or a group. They would describe it as a cult. The teenager would make connections with all the wrong people. He would build not just a local group of friends, but a global following of members who would do everything he said and act under his group name. Branding all of their actions as carried out by 764, the sadists would prey on vulnerable children from all around the globe. All it would take was one DM, a message from a seemingly normal person. As soon as the would-be victim clicked on it and replied, they were in. That's when their game of manipulation began, and before long, they would convince the child to send explicit photographs of themselves. Sometimes the manipulation could go on for a while, but they would make sure that they always got what they wanted in the end. And when they had it, that would be the beginning of the end. They would share the photos with other group members, who would then use it as blackmail to the victim. They would try to attract the victim into their servers, where the real abuse would then begin. They would convince them to voice chat, where they would make them do horrible things. In one instance, they made a child kill their pet for everyone to see, and with that video in hand, they would only get worse. Early on, they would get people to self-harm for them. They would cut 764 or other similar symbols into their flesh, and by this point, some victims may be manipulated to the point where they are convinced to become a fully fledged member. Even if they aren't, they can still be made to lure in other victims, acting friendly but turning as soon as they are in a vulnerable position. Some of the acts that victims were made to commit are absolutely vile, and they were doing it with one goal in mind: to get the victim to end their own life. That was their end goal. They didn't want anyone to be able to report back. They didn't want witnesses. All they wanted was a dead child at the other end of the screen. Oftentimes, people who fall victim to this kind of manipulation and blackmail will feel scared or embarrassed. They won't tell anyone in the real world, and thus, they won't have anyone to fall back on. The more depraved what they're made to do gets, the more that they'll hate themselves. The more that they'll feel like they don't deserve to live. And eventually, everyone inside 764 knew they'd take action. But even though their victim was dead, their crimes wouldn't stop. They would take the videos that they captured, often sexually explicit, and sell them on the dark web for a profit to other predators. With this money, they would be able to sustain their online lifestyle by ruining other people's lives. And Discord essentially sanctioned it. They did nothing to stop the servers, even though the outside world was aware of them. However, Discord wasn't the only place 764 operated, because while their servers were where they all communicated, recruitment rarely began there. Instead, it began somewhere that seemed more innocent on the surface. It began on Roblox. Launched in 2006, Roblox has grown into one of the largest online gaming platforms in the world. Today, it boasts tens of millions of daily active users, but what makes Roblox powerful is also what makes it vulnerable: its audience. A significant portion of its player base consists of children and teenagers. With its bright user-generated worlds and endless social hubs, it is no wonder it attracts younger people, because it is what you could only describe as a virtual playground. But to a predator, it's more than that. To them, it's access. For years, Roblox has faced criticism over moderation challenges. With millions of user-created games and communities, enforcing safety at scale has always proved to be extraordinarily difficult for the company. And when there is so much to moderate, and the company doesn't take it as seriously as it should, that's where groups like 764 thrive. Recruitment doesn't look sinister, but rather, it simply looks like friendship. Oftentimes, it will be something as simple as a casual interaction in a roleplay server. Then, it can move to an invite to a private world, and then subtle shifts in behavior. Conversations would move off platform, usually to Discord. Roblox was never the be-all and end-all, but rather it was the net to catch potential victims. And once they claimed their victims, Discord was their prison. This isn't speculation either, because over the years, multiple reports have linked 764 affiliated users to regular activity on Roblox servers where minors were heavily present. They'd often represent the group in either their username or on their avatar, and they always followed a pattern. They would identify isolated and vulnerable users, build up trust between them, before finally doing what they intended to do all along. But this doesn't happen anymore. Right? Because last year, Roblox implemented age verification systems and safety updates. Age-verified users are now grouped within their own brackets, and certain features, such as chat, are restricted for younger players. And yes, on paper, this seems incredibly reassuring. However, that is far from the case, and no verification system is ever flawless. In fact, most of the time, it's just covering for the hell that's still going on. Accounts can be bought. Older users can pose as minors with no one to stop them. And because Roblox does not rely heavily on permanent device or IP bans, accounts that are removed can be replaced within minutes. If you take one down, 2 more will pop up in its place, and that is the cycle. Meanwhile, in private servers and smaller communities, as I highlighted in my documentary on the platform, illegal behaviour can flourish before moderators ever see it. With millions of concurrent interactions and the promise of privacy to an extent, response time becomes Roblox's biggest weakness, and there are places they just aren't looking. In some documented cases unrelated to 764, people who looked into the platform found entire Roblox groups operating as coded marketplaces. Using seemingly harmless language, they managed to mask their predatory intent, and these phrases that you would be happy to scroll past were actually dog whistles to people in the know. And that is what makes platforms like Roblox attractive to these organized abuse groups like 764. It's not because they're directly endorsed, but it's because with the sheer scale of the platform and the lack of effective moderation, they can essentially operate invisibly. When you hide among millions of children, you disappear. This is exactly why it works so well as their hunting ground. People believe they are safe on the platform, and that is a dangerous mindset to have. Especially when parents believe the platform is safe, their guard can be down. That is the perfect opportunity for these groups to make their moves. We know the first step is subtle. A child responding to a simple message, thinking nothing of it, not realizing that their life was about to be changed forever. Something we need to establish is that 764 was not just a collection of people communicating online. It was quite literally a grooming machine. A Discord ecosystem of abuse. Every new member was like a gear in this system that just refused to fail. For many of the teens drawn into it, the group may appear small at first, like just any other Discord community. There are millions of them, and this may have seemed no different, simply a space that offered friendship, acceptance, and overall, attention. And that belonging proved to be incredibly powerful. As a lonely teenager or young adult, it can almost feel like salvation, like they've finally found their sanctuary. And once you're drawn in, that's when the desensitization begins. A lot of people online are generally desensitized anyway nowadays, but this is a different beast. They may first have encountered edgy jokes or dark humor, and they laugh along without thinking. But then would come images, pictures of bullets writing out 764, and then people carve the call sign into their own skin. Then videos of cruelty. Then actual deaths. Each step into the rabbit hole pulls them further away from reality, and by the time the new recruits may realize the extremity and depravity of what they've found themselves in, they are way too far in to quit. At that point, they are part of the group. They are just as sick and twisted as the people who have been in there for years. And it's at this point that the line between what should be horrifying and what is acceptable gets blurred. The unspeakable becomes part of your daily routine. As we know, then comes the reward. In 764, cruelty was literally a currency. The more extreme a member's actions, the more depraved acts they can get their victims to partake in, the higher they are standing. Praise, recognition, and status are the three things that determined everything inside this twisted ecosystem. Over time, you would lose your own identity. You'd become just another member in this group, because for a lot of people, they weren't just part of it. It was literally their life. Their usernames, online avatars, and even physical decoration in their bedrooms were all expressions of loyalty. It was taking membership to a new level until you were fused with the group. And then, if you ever thought about leaving, you'd know that it would be like ripping a part of yourself away. The part that you spent so long building. Even if members did realise the severity of their actions, it was too late. They weren't just people who stumbled upon this, they were active participants and enforcers in the abuse. Each one had become a gear in that aforementioned machine. By design, the system was self-replicating too. Every member had the potential to recruit people, radicalise them and desensitise them. Every act of cruelty trained these people in these disturbing methods, and there was no need for the group to grow artificially, because it was done completely organically through human connection. Although new recruits may start as a victim per se, it wouldn't take long for them to become the recruiter. And because the system is designed like that, it can make you lose sight of who is actually suffering. The real victims who literally ended their own lives because they simply couldn't handle what they were being put through at the hands of these twisted people. Because behind all these mechanics that we've described, everything we've talked about, there are real children. Children whose lives were exploited, and in some cases, cut short. The FBI have described 764 not just as a network of predators, but as a system designed to target the vulnerability of kids and push them to the edge. One of the cases that shocked investigators occurred in 2022. A 14-year-old boy from Washington named Jay was manipulated into attempting suicide after sustained online grooming and coercion by members of 764. Reports revealed that the boy had reached out online for support, a common pattern between the victims, and was instead captured by predators who used deception and psychological pressure to drive him towards his death. Officials eventually charged an 18-year-old German man known by the online alias White Tiger in connection with Jay's death. Prosecutors alleged that he and others used elaborate tactics of affection and control to isolate Jay from his support systems elsewhere. And in the end, their sick plan succeeded. On January 17th, 2022, they asked him, "You got a rope?" They tried to persuade him to kill himself while he was naked, saying it was hotter. But when that didn't work, they continued to encourage the act anyway. They told him to livestream it to Instagram, which he did, and he hung himself with an extension cord in a parking lot behind a grocery store. A life ended needlessly. During the investigation into his death, the FBI revealed multiple other victims, younger children who were coerced into doing all sorts of things. In one documented incident, a 12-year-old girl was manipulated into carving her abuser's name into her skin, filming the act as proof that the group member would then add to his trophy collection. She was forced to do this through sick threats and manipulation. Other cases were also described, some of which involved a 12-year-old girl being encouraged to carve the aforementioned White Tiger username into herself. One 15-year-old was convinced to stab herself. Another was blackmailed into self-harming on a Discord call. But it didn't end there. In these real cases, victims told authorities how they were commanded to kill pets on camera. If it didn't go that far, they were told to torture the animal as proof of loyalty to these predators. And they always chose to target individuals who were already suffering. Young people who had depression, mental health struggles, or a history of trauma. It was was like a checklist that they were ticking off. The fear that they struck into their victims was calculated as well. Members of the group shared so-called lore books with each other, which contained victims' personal information. Not only that, but their images and private videos. They would use these lore books, make the victim aware, and threaten to expose everything to their families, friends, and schools. They were used to keep them quiet, making them feel too ashamed to seek help. Even when victims wanted to report what was happening, members of 764 would use threats such as online harassment or even swatting calls. They would also dox not only victims but their loved ones too. And the scale is massive. To date, more than 350 individuals have been subjects of investigations tied to 764, and more are being discovered every day. These aren't just statistics. You need to understand that they are lives. Lives of children who should have been playing games, going to school, and laughing with friends. Instead, they are sitting alone in their room, convinced that a stranger on the internet is their only source of meaning in the world. Lives like Jay's. Lives like the unnamed victims who may never speak out because of the shame and the fear that these predators exploit. But the FBI are closing down on these people. And now, there's nowhere to hide. When 764's existence became known to the world, law enforcement faced a problem unlike almost any other they had encountered. This wasn't your typical criminal ring with headquarters or things like that. Instead, this was a digital network of predators and extremists spread across continents and hidden behind encrypted messages. Their servers disappeared and reappeared, and that made it very difficult. By the time the FBI were brought into the picture, they were faced with tackling a violent crime enterprise that had gone global. Early investigative work revealed that 764 was not limited to one server or one platform. Within the broader comm ecosystem, a group of interconnected Discord and Telegram groups, thousands of users were operating in dozens of servers worldwide, evading moderation to the best of their ability. They had a presence everywhere. But over the course of 2024 and 25, law enforcement began to make their move, as US authorities carried out arrests on individuals who played central roles. They were starting to dismantle the network. One of the most significant takedowns was when Leonidas Varagianis and Prasan Nepal were taken down, the alleged leaders of a core subgroup called 764 Inferno. They were charged with running an international child exploitation enterprise in connection with 764. Varagianis, a 21-year-old US citizen in Greece at the time of his arrest, and Nepal, a 20-year-old from North Carolina, were allegedly coordinating the grooming and extortion of minors. They were directing the production and distribution of CSAM, and were all doing it from the comfort of their own homes. Just last month, a group of global authorities managed to fully or partially identify as many as 179 new comm members, 764 or otherwise, and managed to determine at least 62 victims who they will soon be able to contact for support. These people are being apprehended, but it's still a massive problem. However, people are being sentenced. In March 2025, Jack Rocker, 19 years old, was arrested in Tampa, Florida, and was sentenced to 84 months in a federal prison for possession of CSAM in connection with 764. His device contained thousands of images and videos depicting child abuse, including against infants and toddlers, along with a lot of other extremist material. But even with some arrests, dismantling this network has proven to be far from simple. Many individuals are still out there, using online aliases, VPNs, and burner devices, anything they can use to protect their identities. Investigators must trace their digital presence through encrypted chats, deleted messages, and platforms that are unwilling to cooperate. And because of the abuse techniques they deploy on their victims, it can be extremely hard to convince victims to testify. And that's a problem that can take time to solve. Even as arrests mount, the reach of 764 remains a chilling threat that law enforcement cannot ignore. Despite arrests and the growing number of members behind bars, the shadow of 764 continues to stretch across the digital world. For every server discovered, another hides in anonymity. The threat has been slowed, but it is far from gone. Law enforcement pursues them relentlessly, piecing together a global network of abuse. Yet, the digital landscape is vast, and predators adapt faster than authorities can track. Every investigation is a step forward, but for every message that goes unreported, the danger remains. The children who survived bear the scars, both physical and mental, that will never fully heal. For those who didn't make it, their absence is a permanent reminder of what happens when manipulation and cruelty go unchecked. These groups are real. These predators are still out there. And until every corner of the network is uncovered, they will never truly disappear. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video because it really helps the channel. Rate the podcast 5 stars and follow if you're listening on Spotify, and wherever you're listening, make sure you turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload. That's a video I've been wanting to make for a while, so I'm glad to finally have it out for you guys. Let me know in the comments what you think of 764 and other comic communities, and also make sure that you check out my subreddit where you can submit stories and other video ideas you'd like to see me cover. You can check that out on Reddit at r/Jessicur or email it to me at jessicurbusiness@gmail.com. Don't forget to check me out on social media. I have Instagram, Blue Sky, and Twitter, and if you want to get involved with the community, then you can join my Discord server using the link in the description. Thank you so much to my Jessicur Plus members Morrigan, Alex Rod, K4 Silver, Entrepreneur, Collectiki, Brooke, Carmilla, Based Finger, Midnight Kitty, River Camera, Willow, Briar, Frozen Roses, Jessicur, Shiv the Shrew, Rudy Jazz, Mikey Poopy, Clara, and Space. If you want to support the channel, then the best way to do so is over in Jessicur Plus. There are over 100 more videos for you to enjoy on there, and it's just a great way to support the channel. I also have a Ko-Fi link, a Patreon, and also just becoming a channel member here if you want support in a way that's other than subscribing and liking, but of course, that's more than enough, and obviously I appreciate your support, guys. But if you want to check out Jessicur Plus, where you can get a lot of benefits, then make sure you head over to jessicur.com. I'll be back very soon with another video, but if you want another right now, then YouTube thinks that you'll like the video that's on your screen.